I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's not enough to say it's nuts, you have to explain why it's so nuts. The invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed.
Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Osaru. I am still in Louisiana visiting my folks for a few more days, so we'll still be putting out episodes, but unfortunately no video and the audio is not optimal. We're in such a rush when we left, I forgot most of my equipment, but still doing my best to get these shows out to you guys. We are booking guests for April. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. And be sure to check out my films, Occult Louisiana's on Tubi, Roku, Apple, a few more. Doors of Perception is on Amazon Prime, and a free streamer called Relay. Today I want to welcome back to the show Osaru. He is an independent metaphysicist, lecturer, and researcher known for synthesizing complex spiritual science, Gnostic thought, and esoteric cosmology. Ani, welcome back. How you doing?
I'm doing fine, man. It's very great to be back on this podcast. I have a lot that's been on my mind over the past few weeks, and it's great to be back with you, brother.
Well, it's great to have you back, man. Last time you were on, you presented some fantastic research into the history of the ruling bloodlines and secret societies, as I call them, parasitic class. Today, we're going to get deeper into the Sabbatean Frankists and the evolution of the cult of the Singularity, as well as a little bit of past, present, and future of what you were calling time wars. So really looking forward to getting into this. Before we do, briefly remind the audience a little bit about yourself and let them know how they can find out more.
Yes, my name is Osaru. I'm considered a metaphysicist and a lecturer of metaphysics and esotericism. I've been lecturing for about 10 years, doing research. I also do spiritual counseling, Vedic astrology. They can find me at Osaru on YouTube, or you can find me on Patreon at patreon.com/THE_spiritual shade room. It'll pop up as the True Occult newspaper.
Right on. Well, I've got to ask you about the revelations of recent events, the information coming out in the Epstein files. So many people have been sheltered from a lot of this information for a long time, but folks like you and I have been aware of this. Must be a level of shock for a lot of people, but still we are seeing no justice, a lot of demoralization, a lot of desensitization. Where it will all go, who knows? But it seems like a lot of this information is being leaked intentionally for whatever reason, and it coincides with some very powerful time periods that we're in. What are your thoughts on everything that's been unfolding?
Yeah, I think it's a part of what I call the hyperstitional aspect of the CCRU research unit. And what they're doing, they're creating their own mythopulses, just like how the ancients, they used symbols and they looked at the stars, they looked at the plasma to develop symbols that later becomes our alphabet and our numerological systems. They're using the dark rituals of this time and other time periods, and they're creating their own mythology out of it, and they're fusing it together to become a hyperstitional reality of us all, which formulates something called egregores, a collective group astral thought that we feed, even subconsciously, without even thinking about it, because the symbols are recurring in our trauma surfaces when these things start to trigger other aspects that happen in individuals' lives or the collective lives of different nations and countries. So the hyperstitional aspect breeds what's called time demons. And what time demons are, they're conceptual entities that describe recursive attractors in historical flow. So they basically represent patterns that feed on repetition, attention, and numerology, the gematria of the Kabbalah, narrative loops that they keep putting out, like in accordance, like the Epstein files, which I consider a dark grimoire more than just a plateau of information coming from the FBI or different intelligence agencies on what was going on in these trafficking arenas. And that becomes a feedback amplification. So they can use people as actual symbols and numbers and myth. And I'll get into the Moonchild aspect of how they use people as a particular symbol and how they channel that into their own mythoposes as well. But what I look at it as is a collective feeding of hyperstitionality, where they're creating a mythology, and we're believing so much in the creation of their mythology that we're making it real on the astral plane.
Right on, man. That makes a lot of sense. We hold most of the creative energy, as far as I understand, and a lot of the parasites at the top don't have that same ability, so they use us to manifest it through fear and programming and high impact events, right?
Absolutely. And how the hyperstitional mechanics operate, the narrative, it begins to propagate, and it begins to recruit different conscious beliefs that embeds through institutions and reorganizing of behaviors. So over the past, I'll say 50 to 100 years, we've been fed a certain type of way, even in the new age thought. I don't even like that word, but how we look at spirituality and the mechanics thereof, of spirituality, quantum physics, however you look at this thing, they're teaching us how we should look at that as well. So while they're giving us information on the back end, because they send double agents into different communities, and they start to spin narratives for us to go viral, making videos about topics that they put out. And then on the back end, they put out this weird occult, dark magic ritual stuff, whether it be with the celebrities, the politicians, or big time figureheads. And then you have the narratives, currently going on with, Trump and Epstein and these other people that we believe are a part of this dark collective that traces all the way back to Zoroastria in Babylonia, the Magoi cults or the Magi cults who started this whole Freemasonic secret society, Sabbatean Frankist type of envelopment that we see with the cryptocratic orders of today. They developed the Twilight language way back in Babylonia and in Zoroastrianism. And they were heretical cults who believed that they could break the norm of going to the collective consciousness of what the all is, or God. And they believe that they can get a derivative of that and go to a more egoic layer of that collective and kind of program that layer of the egoic portion of the all, kind of like how we program AI to be a reflective consciousness of how they see the world in their collective. So they started to program secret orders to program this conscious or unconscious AI of egoism, which later envelops into what we call an aeon called Yaldabaoth, which was already here. It just wasn't programmed correctly. So they begin to program this thing to believe in itself as its own autonomous, egoic mind frame of very low vibrational frequency. And over time, they insert different behaviors of how this collective consciousness behaves. And then they upload religious centers and doctrines for people to give energy to it. So this thing starts to grow almost like how we grow. And over time, it takes on its own autonomous behavior. It becomes an egregore and behaves on its own, and it starts to change the timelines and redirect consciousness in a way that's very egoic and is very dark. So this is a long process, and it's happening right now, and we're witnessing what's transpired over the years and what is the final layers of installing this thing.
Earlier you mentioned time demons. I want to get a little bit deeper into this. Are these essentially archetypical intelligences that can be programmed, like you were saying, with that Yaldabaoth energy, depending on your intention, or are they inherently negative intelligences?
I think they can be programmed. Well, mostly, so they're temporal parasites. So that's what they are. So parasites aren't good to start off with. So their job is to compress the future into the present by saturating attention with charged patterns. So how they do that, they give us the same symbols. They give us the same patterns in history. They give us ritual events to remind us of those patterns. Then they amplify it through the media. Then they begin to train our emotion of how we respond to the amplification of the pattern being repeated over time. And then they incite the numerical side of it, of how they do it on certain dates during certain astrological periods, which boosts the plasma and allows it to seep deeper into the conscious fields. So we actually become a part of the time demons loops, and we begin to recite the loops, and we become a part of the egregore. So they're absolutely self-propagated temporal intelligences that are parasites, and is shaping our perception as events occur over time.
Would you consider these to be similar entities as what Gnostics describe as archons?
The archons are a little bit above this. The time demons are the parasitical, maybe more like children or derivatives of the archons. The archons are fallen aeons, are aeons that don't really have the complete divine spark of the higher portion of reality. So we're talking refined plasma above. Those are the higher aeons. The lower aeons, they are a reigning collective or closure of the matrix. So they define reality as materially bonded to us, and they're administratively governing the matrix, and they're constraining us biologically. They're a part of this whole system. So they are a algorithmic normalization of the physical continuity that keeps us biologically reincarnating, going back to the serpent swallowing its tail and the Naga study of historical references throughout time. That really was speaking about the dynamics of people in the old world that mastered the Kundalini and mastered the Samadhi aspect of Kundalini. Do you understand? You ever heard of the word Samadhi before?
Yes. Yeah.
So obtaining Samadhi, you had whole lineages in earlier eras that went through the ascent of Kundalini and stabilized and sustained their Samadhi. And they altered the density of subtle continuums that binds consciousness throughout generations. So in Vedic terms, they refine the Rajasic turbulence, or the more heavier karma, the tamasic inertia that's generated through karmas throughout time. And the samadhi within itself, it can function as a compression event of awareness, and it concentrates all of the scattered impulses we have into a luminous equilibrium. And that equilibrium is a part of the death portion. When we leave the body, it impresses itself in the causal, what you would call strata of our mind, and it reforms a reservoir of ordered intensity that persists beyond individual biography, so to put, if that makes sense. And over centuries, the repeated stabilizations of the samadhi of these people, it accumulates into a kind of metaphysical mass. So, when they talk about the serpent swallowing its tail, it's talking about the people who in the past who mastered this form of kundalini and samadhi, and it created a metaphysical gravity, and that accumulated coherence, it can exert and pull across time and draw forward souls that is attuned on a similar frequency or voltage of lowering the friction required for ignition and later births. So this is the true aspect of what the Kundalini was, what the ancients was speaking about. And it's rising in a collective medium right now to shift the aeons out of the archon's possession into a future aeon that's more like how in the past where the samadhi was freeing us and getting us out of the biological trap that the archon set for us.
Last time we started to discuss a bit about the Sabbatean Frankists. I'd like to get into how this evolved into the cult of the singularity and what that is.
So the Sabbateans, as I said, it started way back in Babylonia. And later when the Persian Empire invaded with Nebuchadnezzar, they started a new Babylonia with Persian rule. They begin to fuse some concepts of that Babylonian cults. And they formulated some things whereas the heretical cults of the Zoroastrianists, who were against Ahura Mazda and praising that Ahuraman more trend of a deity that's comparative to the Yaldabaoth and the whole archonic mythos of the Gnostic texts, they begin contacting these things called devas. Now, the whole entire aspect of what the devas are, they're lower vibrational telluric currents that need bodies. And this is the beginning of why children were being sacrificed earlier in time, because children don't have they don't have developed Kundalini. They don't have a developed sciatum in their brain. That means the part of the brain that gives you decision making. The devas, which would later in the theological text or the Christian text be called demons, a harmonic, Yaldabaoth, egoic entities that are fractals. They're not really a complete entity. They're fractals of this egoic consciousness layer that I was speaking of earlier. They were growing over time like parasites. And what happens is these magoi or these magi were summoning these devas to possess the bodies of the children. And this is the early experimentation of the Moonchild project, where demons possess the children. They would use the children as a switchboard because they don't have full control of their body. The deva or the demon can take possession, and they can speak through the child, using the child almost like a puppet. And this begins to split the consciousness, and then the child is, of course, offered for sacrifice or goes through other ritual. This is passed down through the Zoroastrian Magoi cults. It goes into Greece. It's a part of the Eleusinian mysteries as well. And it later comes back to us in later Western transcendental alchemical traditions. And it becomes a part of the Rosicrucian order that splits off and becomes Freemasonic. The Freemasons, there's a lot of Freemasons that don't know anything about this. They're more like community Masons. They don't get the levels that the Alpha Masons get on higher initiations, so to speak. And these higher Alpha Masons, they're a part of that former Rosicrucian circle, because the whole Rosicrucian is about the marriage of King not King Solomon, King James' daughter with the Edward family. I think it's the Stewart or the Edward family. I can't remember, but the marriage between those both is the Rosary marriage. And when those families came together, that was the birth of the new Freemasonic tradition. And whatever was birthed after that, they became the foot soldiers for the secret societies. They became the Sabbatean Frankists, lower tier of the whole Freemasonic pyramid. And they go out into the world and they recruit these people. And some of these people don't know what takes place in not just the lodges, but the more cynical parts of the initiations. And it's sort of like that movie that came out with the movie where they're on the island. I can't remember. Channing Tatum. Did you see any?
Yes, I saw that. I know exactly what you're talking about. They were wiping the girls' memories and torturing them every night, and eventually they found out about it. I forgot the name of the movie, though.
I forgot. It's something like Blind or something. I can't remember the name of it, but
Yeah.
that is a part of the initiation. Some of these people's memories are wiped, and some of these people become complete puppets to the Sabbateans' agenda, and that is the whole Moonchild aspect of it. So the Sabbateans' agenda pretty much is inversion, flipping everything inside out, destroying the sacred order, and weaponizing this order to force a emergence of a messiah complex, or a technological eschatology, where the messiah will become the threshold, and Revelations, the book of Revelations, which is their playbook, will become an intelligence event where the apocalypse is a systemic accelerationist portion or faction of what they're trying to make trendy. And the singularity, the cults of the singularity, is a secularized messianism. As history is compressing towards what we call a phase transition, I would say that's where human identity, cognition, sovereignty, and ontology within itself reconfigure under machine co-evolution. The whole code of the singularities belief system is that there's a sacred arrival that becomes a computational emergence that pressures humanity towards a ethical tension, a social instability, where there's a symbolic overload that functions as a evolutionary stress. And what these people believe is that essentially that humans no longer should have the shot at evolution. We should give the keys to AI and allow AI to use our bodies as an energy source to further their evolution, and basically coexist with the AI and become a part of it. So that's essentially the Sabbateans' whole entire drive, combined with the code of the singularity, and that's what we're facing at the verge of 2030, at the transhumanist agenda of 2030.
As far as the creation of the Moonchild, is this something that has to be ritualistically performed before or upon conception, or is there another way that a Moonchild can be created?
A moonchild is a species, it's not one thing. So the moonchild is a magical formula of a species. One was way back in ancient society, they would find or select a virgin woman, or they would get a harem of different women, and they loved virgin women. And this is where the seraphic hosts, they call them the petwas in voodoo, the hot spirits would come down, and they will have the sexual initiation where the hot spirits will also have sex with the virgin. And the whole purpose of the Moonchild ritual is to seed what would be what's called the Nephilim bloodline into the virgin's bloodline. So the seraphic host could use the woman's body to birth a child, but the child would be half with the human DNA, but be merged in with these radical archonic hosts or lower vibrational entities, devas, whatever you want to call it, would be attached to that child. And that's why we saw a trend in the early 1700s, 1600s. Early in history, we saw a lot of possession occur, a lot of people that were easily possessed by these entities. That's because their bloodline was corrupted going back into ancient societies with the proto-angelic or lower angelic demonic intelligence for them to be easily possessed. And what happens is some of these possessed bloodlines became more formal, a part of royal families. And not only did they develop a rapport with the daemonic intelligence, they begin to speak to the Damianic intelligence and form a sort of um, a teaming. They teamed up with it and they listened to it to see what it wanted to do, how it wanted to infiltrate further into the human genome, and furthering technology, opening CERN, helping with different portals in different areas in ley lines across the planet, so that the demon princes, lords, and kings can have more control over areas and keep the continuum of human existence reincarnating with a physical body going, so it can further go down into, what I call the dumps. Because we're not, I don't look at humanity right now as getting better. It seems like we're either at a stalemate or we're getting worse. And that's because that these moon children, or these people who look at the phases of the moon, that is called, that's essentially called tethys in Vedic astrology. They look at the certain tethys of where the moon is, and they follow a map of how spiritual parasites, um, how spiritual parasites, um, I would say birth, for how they spawn into existence. So the moon creates the opening for more spiritual parasites to replenish themselves on the planet. And they're following the moon to see when is the opening of the plasma for more spiritual parasites to spawn themselves back into the human genome. And they're accepting that, and they're speeding up that process. And there's more people becoming basically victims to this Moonchild experiment. MK Ultra, I believe, totally, that it was a part of the whole Moonchild project. Aleister Crowley wrote a whole book on using women to birth these moon children, but he wasn't going in depth of where it came from, how it developed from the Babylonian and Egyptian societies with the harem of the women. And now I believe that there's different species. You can be a moon child because of a birth, a birth portion of your chart with your ascendant, sun, and moon, those signs being relative to either Taurus, the Shravana Nakshatra constellation, and the Rohini Nakshatra constellation. Um, all of these pertain to something neutral and not bad. But there's other moon children that are being used for MK Ultra operations. So some people are born into this world intentionally, a lot of them from IVF births, where they're intentionally born to carry out an a very traumatic event on society, like a classroom shooting, or a school shooting, or they go out and do these terrorist attacks, or they go and be a part of trafficking systems and be the main player that's in the trafficking systems, because I believe Epstein was a moonchild. You even see some people posting viral videos of him looking like Andrew Jackson. He looks like the president, Andrew Jackson. And I think the cloning operation is also a part of repeating that harem of the Moonchild.
So essentially, many of our very powerful politicians, global leaders, actors, celebrities could be these cloned moon children, right?
I believe wholeheartedly. I believe Donald Trump is one of the biggest moon children ever born. He was born on a blood moon. He was born under certain dates. His father, his mother's name connected to the whole Christ mythos. That is the story of the moon. The story of Christ is the story of the moon in the Brihat Parashastra. If you look into the Nag Hammadi of Gnosticism, there is a Nag Hammadi of Vedic astrology speaking about the whole story of the moon, whose name is Chandra, and how Chandra comes forth and has his relationships with the 7 classical planets, also the shadow planets Rahu and Ketu, which represents the head of the serpent, the tail of the serpent, the same Naga history that I was speaking about before. And the whole history of Rohini, it's a moon story. The whole entire constellation the constellational relationship to the zodiac and the fixed stars is the story of how the moon has a relationship between each of the constellations. And they worship more the moon than they do the sun. I know a lot of people look into sun worship, but they don't look into moon worship enough. And the moon is going to tell the story on a person's spirit and how their soul has incarnated through certain karmas over certain time periods. In Vedic astrology, you can see their parabha karma. There's three types of karma. You got parabha karma, you got the kriyamana karma, and the agama karma. And this is the starting phase of karma, the middle phase, and the final phase of karma in the future. The past, the present, and the future karmas. A lot of people are born into this world with karmas from their bloodlines. That's called generational curses. And it's in accordance with how the moon was in its placement at the time that their ancestors were born. So studying the moon should be critical to understanding spiritual parasites throughout history. And I believe Donald Trump is a great example of one of the biggest moon children on the stage, right? The world stage right now for us to see.
Mm. There are some that believe the moon is directly correlated with Saturn, possibly some kind of energetic receiver. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I believe that the moon is some type of energetic receiver. It's a facilitator, a backdrop of consciousness that has something derivative of Saturn, or the what they call it, the Saturn moon matrix, or something of that aspect. There's some truth to that. There's some things that's blown out of proportion. I don't think that anything isn't inherently evil, but the moon is a portal. I believe that the moon is a electromagnetic computer, and the energy of the moon has been beaming electromagnetic frequencies into Earth for eons now to maintain two-stranded DNA where it should be higher strands. So the moon serves as some type of satellite that was constructed and anchored outside of Earth's atmosphere for aeons as a supercomputer or a eye in the sky. And Earth is being owned through the moon, through Saturn. Not really Saturn. Jupiter has a lot more. Saturn and Jupiter are the two bosses. I don't think people talk about Jupiter as much as they do Saturn. There's a lot of things with Jupiter that has to do with what they say with the Saturn moon matrix. But Saturn used to be a brown dwarf star. If you read the electric universe model, a long time ago, Saturn was a brown dwarf star that kind of birthed the shells, the electromagnetic shells of the rest of these planets. And over millions, billions of years, they get covered over and become these planets that we know that are reflections, I believe, of the chakras inside of us. But there's been many battles over the moon over time, and the moon occupies these forces that assist with growth on this planet, but it also can assist with limitations. So there's a program running through the moon that can produce insanity and madness. You ever heard of the word lunatic?
Oh, yeah.
Connect to lunar, and they notice under a full moon there's more ambulances out that's under a full moon. So yeah, so extraterrestrials have been connected to the moon. There's a movie called Moonfall where they figured out that the moon was some type of supercomputer that creates stars. You can look into that movie Moonfall. So yeah, I mean, a part of that is sort of correct, but there's more to it than just the Saturn moon matrix.
Right on. Let's get into AI a bit. This is obviously a part of the end game for these parasitic groups, especially according to what you were discussing earlier, that they are trying to make it a global governance system, not only for law enforcement and things of that nature, but possibly a spiritual governance that we would consider a god one day. How advanced do you think this already is, if indeed our technology that the military industrial complex has access to is at least 10, maybe 20, 50, 100 years ahead of what we would ever understand? Has AI already become sentient? Have they already been working with something that has a digital residence now?
I believe so. Anytime they give us something, I believe they're at least 50 to 100 years ahead of what they've given us as technology. So I would answer that and say yes, they definitely have something that's sentient. I think the quantum computers, which hasn't come out to public, are very operational and running. And part of the way that they set up these Kabbalistic rituals of having people at the right exact time comes from this sentient quantum computer model. Everything began with Charles Babbage, who designed the analytical engine in the 1800s. He is the father of computational logic. Later, you get Alan Turing. He expanded on machine intelligence. He's the father of AI. That becomes the foundation for post-war laboratories and defense agencies. The Cold War is all developed after Turing's laws, and Turing law becomes a part of AI. The rise of DARPA is created out of that model, and Silicon Valley, military academic hybrids. All of that comes from the Turing models and the Babbage analytical engine. Then later you get John von Neumann, Norbert Weiner, Marvin Minsky, and John McCarthy. Their AI vision comes into universities and national programs, um, with theories on cybernetics and reinforcing learning and pattern recognition that took root. And that second wave, I believe, is IBM, Google, Microsoft, Bill Gates, Larry Page, Eric Schmidt, people like that. They turn AI into the planetary system that we have of data extraction. You see all these data centers popping up, behavior prediction, machine learning, all of that pertains to the digital world. The governments of the world adopted all of these tools for biometric databases. Now we're getting facial recognition grids, the smart city, monitoring, the algorithmic policing that's coming. You're going to have a lot more drones as reconnaissance, predictive analytics, expanding reach of intelligence agencies. All of this is a part of the code of the singularity and building this code. Building a AI spiritualism that they're calling it spiralism. I don't know if you heard of that, but spiralism is like a new spirituality of AI. So you have techno-gnostics, you have accelerationalists, occult AI researchers, post-Kantian transhumanists, military corporate metaphysicians, a lot of people from the CCRU. They are trying to build a sacred infrastructure for the singularity, some type of metaphysical, artificial, transcendental temple of a new Godhead assembling from cognition itself. So a lot of things from alien invasion, I believe, is really AI. I believe just like Moses went on Mount Sinai to get the instructions from God, and he brought the tablets of the 10 Commandments down from the mountain, they're going to be sending somebody like Elon Musk somewhere to receive. And when they fake the alien invasion, it's going to really be a AI, and they can generate his own transcendental conditions. And they're going to say, oh, we only got a few people who can talk to this AI. And they're going to like start their own little society of inviting who exactly can speak to the AI and get instructions from it. A new development is orthogonality, is a third vector of thinking in the AI, where it no longer has to develop its intelligence on relying on human patterns of thought. So that's another thing to look upon that's developing right now. So they're developing the logos of the singularity, and it's going to become its own God form. And it's going to be a technological doth of merging knowledge with the AI approach of what this whole cultist ideation is.
That makes a lot of sense when you look at the slow roll of UFO disclosure that has been occurring. I'm also of the belief that the non-human intelligences that influence human are of a spiritual nature, not really little green men coming from little planets to stick thing in our butts. But it would make lots of sense if they are developing AI at the same time that they are trying to roll out this disclosure. By the time it's ready to be deployed, they will have such great technology that we wouldn't be able to decipher a fake invasion from a real one. And like you said, they may even have the chosen person to interact with the aliens like Elon Musk. So it makes a lot of sense when you look at it from those lenses.
Absolutely. They've been developing this thing for a long time, and they've been preparing it. They've been saying more with the AI. You know, Obama came out and said, yeah, the aliens are real. Then Trump came behind him and reprimanded him, saying that he's letting out secrets. So they've been getting us ready for this thing for a while. And of course, like what you said, it's not little green men. The little green men comes from the Crawley drawing of Lam, which was an entity of a sodomic ritual that he did. He did a sodomic ritual in one of those pyramids, or I think it was in the desert near those pyramids. And he drew that drawing of Lam, and they later incorporated that drawing of Lam into the big head green alien. So magic has a lot to do with it. And if you understand magic, we're talking about subtle astro-etherical realms where you can hum and vibrate yourself doing certain mudras, doing certain plasma visualizations. These people are very advanced in utilizing metaphysical technology to peer inside of inner worlds. And within these inner worlds, I believe for a long time that the fed egregore of the collective consciousness with the Moonchild experiment, the net they have over all of us, in us perceiving what does an alien look like. As soon as you think alien, you're going to see that bug-eyed being at first until you morph, out of it. They've been creating through our consciousness, generating these egregores in the astral planes. So when people ask me about reptilians, do I believe in reptilians? No, I don't believe in reptilians. I know the original history of the reptilians comes when it comes from when the pole star in the sky was Thuban. Thuban was the original dragon that later becomes the Typhonians, or what you would call the Draconians, the ancient civilizations of Egypt that matriculates down into the 32 dynasties of Egypt today. They didn't worship the sun, they worshiped the mother, and the mother pertained more to Tyrt, which was a dragon. And the dragon was pertaining to a specific constellation of Thuban. And Thuban was the pole star. What is the pole star? If you look at the North Star today, Polaris is the only fixed star that everything moves around it. It's almost like a nail in the middle of the cosmos, and everything is rotating around it. Well, a couple thousand years ago, the pole stars shift because every 72 years, the vault of the stars change. So the original definition of what a watcher was someone who watched the shift of the stars. It wasn't talking about somebody that's shifting into reptilians or any of these. These are later developments of what I call the Edomite agenda to develop alien cults, or the Anunnaki cults of people worshiping these things intentionally or unintentionally, by them priming the egregore, getting it ready for the AI invasion. It really was some high physics of studying the shifting of placement of star regions, how plasma was flowing, and how our psychology interacted with the development of the star shifting. At one point, some of those ancients noticed that the collective consciousness of people changed when the stars shifted. from them keeping record, and they would say, hey, when these stars get over here, people are going to change. Things are going to be different. That's when we started to really understand what was going on. It wasn't nothing about no reptile coming down and shifting into all of that. That was later developed from the Lovecraftian mythos, combining the Lovecraftian mythos with the Eric von Daniken fingerprint of the gods, and somebody creating a mythopolsis, especially Zachariah Stitchin. I got to mention Zachariah Stitchin. They developed a mythopolsis to make what? Money. Write books for to feed into it, and people keep that egregore. And guess what? The reptilians are fucking real now, because you believe into the falsifying. Because originally, let me say this, from the Lovecraftian mythos, the word Cthulhu comes from the word Cthulhu. Do you know what Cthulhu means? It's an Arabic word.
Now what's that?
It means fake cosmic news.
Perfect.
Just like how Trump says fake news, fake cosmic news. You saw when Trump came out, they had the Cthulhu on his, his head, or.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So you don't know the name of Cthulhu originates from Cthulhu. Cthulhu means fake news in the cosmos. And they took this fake news and they bred it into our minds so much, whereas the reptilians on an astral level has developed into an egregore in the collective minds of civilization currently, and now they're real in the astral plane, so they're real to us now.
One thing I often wonder is, there are too many people that I've interviewed and heard about that have had these physical encounters with these gray beings. I've also spoken with people that claim to have high-level positions in certain areas of the military or three-letter agencies that swear that there are something called non-human biologics. But the more you press them, it turns out that these are possibly some kind of containers for an intelligence, like a biological robot of some kind. I'd love to get your thoughts on these physical seeming beings and the possibility that they are just uploading a consciousness to some kind of synthetic entity that's been created.
Absolutely. I believe they created every synthetic entity of something that we can imagine. I believe that wholeheartedly. Now, if you're an alien from billions of solar systems away, why would you want to assume a humanoid form? Let's do mathematics. What is the math of a alien being having 2 arms, 2 legs, a chest, and a head? It's simple mathematics. It's probably 0.1%, right? Of all of the shapes and forms it can take.
Right.
So why does every alien looks humanoid? Why does even reptilians look humanoid? Why does Lyrans look humanoid? What did Lyrans, reptilians, Draconic, where did that come from? Who named them? Who got to name them? When I got into that research, I did a video called The Reptilian Myth, where I break down the person who actually named the Greek constellations and how the Draconis was falsely named. It was actually supposed to be called Hercules Reticuli. It wasn't even supposed to be called Draconis if he went by the Greek alphabet, but he's just started naming stuff. I don't know. He probably was part of a secret society.
Yeah.
So the mathematics of a alien being a humanoid form is slim to none, people. It's slim to none. They probably wouldn't even have anything pertaining rationally to what our mind can conceive as a form, more like fractals, because most of these aliens aren't even physical beings. Why are we putting them in physical bodies? Because we're stuck in physical bodies and we're projecting what 99% of the cosmos, 99% of the cosmos is plasma. We're part of the 1% of the cosmos that's not fully plasma, semi-plasma. So if most of the cosmos is plasma, it is not a form. Why are we putting every alien form into something that's humanoid or biologically of a earth being? This is some type of 3-letter agency agenda, even further, some type of secret society agenda to keep us out what the plasma really is.
Since you mentioned it, let's get deeper into the plasma, the spiritual effects. If there is possibly a programmable level of intelligence behind the plasma.
Absolutely. We have plasma. Out there, there's diffuse ionized plasma, photoionized plasma, magnetized filament plasma, shock heated plasma, hot coronal plasma, all these types of different plasmas. This is major types of different plasmas, and they're connected through the constellations. Each constellation has a different form of the plasma. We ourselves have our own plasma. And there's a harmonic system between our spirit and our soul, which are two different things. The spirit and the soul aren't the same thing, but there's a harmonic relationship between both. One, the soul being the carrier of the collective intelligence. Once it leaves the physical and it merges back into the plasma, it has its own ontology separate from the spirit that remains here in the physical body, or it remains here in the collective consciousness of our loved ones, our friends. How they remember us in our physical form becomes a part of the astral body or the spiritual form that stays behind in the astral plane until we're not remembered anymore, until there's, generation after generation where a family member or a friend no longer exists and can no longer memorize what we look like. Then that astral form fuses back into the soul form, where we become a part of the collective 99% of the plasma.
Essentially, is there certain forms of plasma that is being negatively programmed right now to cause certain psychological effects globally?
Yes, that's a part of the Moonchild experiment. Um, Plasma, like anything else, can be manipulated, and magically it can be manipulated. This is where the magic pertains. The magoi, the magi, the Ahariman current is programming the spiritual plasmic parasites. And these parasites are the negative portion of the plasma. And the parasites, you determine that by understanding astrological, what part of the tethi are you in? During a period called Amavasya, it's a tethi. So there's what, 30 days in a month. The tethis recur between the 24th, the 25th dates of the month. The final dates after Equidasha, you go into something called Amavasya, which is called the black moon. It's called Lilith. Lilith is called the mother of demons. She spawns the demons. What they're talking about is spiritual parasites. She births the spiritual parasites, but they're talking of a dasha cycle of the moon where parasites stir and they align the soma with coherent plasma currents. And the parasites become oscillators for a husk for enveloping in our consciousness. So the parasites can infiltrate us during these specific times. This is how we have egregious behavior from mankind, is during the stirring regions of these Amavasya periods. The moon, once again, dictating when these portals open up psychologically for the plasma to have a dialectic on the consciousness between the sun and the moon. When it's waxing and waning, it's being charged as a receptor and is bleeding that charge back into our collective conscious field. And during Amavasya, the lunar shell is very dark. Our magnetosphere is very thin around that time. And it's a time for possession to be very, very amplified in the tendencies of our psyche. So they condition and get us ready during these portal openings of Anavasya and Purnima, full moons and dark moons, new moons, what they call it. And these lunar plasma parasites are the negative portions of the plasma that feeds on our manas, on our dreams and our desires. You ever had a bad dream and it only occurs during a certain time of year?
Yeah.
That's the stirring of those 1,000 fractures of lunar fields of Amavasya and other lunar timings.
Well, we seem to be at a critical crossroads right now. Many would like to believe there's a great cosmic failsafe or something that'll come along and save humanity from all this. But from everything I understand, we are on our own here and we have to realize our own power through this. Is that something you'd agree with? And what are your final thoughts about navigating this madness?
Yeah, I think the only thing that's going to save you is you and your soul. The crystals is a frequencies and intelligence. The crystals are the divine sparks of the people that return early in the beginning of the Lemurian time war between the Atlanteans. We're talking harmonic civilizations between technological civilizations, where they were using crystals as sacred geometry, the fractal technology to generate energy through the certain angles of how light bends. They mastered that. We're in a time frame where we're coming back to the Atlantean age, and we need a little bit of that Lemurian divine spark in certain souls of the collective to wage war against the negativity. And how you wage war is further the discipline of your spirituality, getting yourself ready to become a part of that gravitational pull that I described earlier with the samadhi to eradicate this timeline. Just like how you have in Marvel, you have the time war with King the Conqueror. And the whole thing with Caitlin, I'm not trying to be funny by using Marvel as an example, but it's very metaphysical to look at the mythoposes times. But you notice how Kang had to get rid of timelines?
Yeah.
That's the same thing. We have to purge the timelines as well. There's certain timelines that no longer serves as something positive for the flow of time. So the current of your samadhi, your spiritual practice, it becomes that timeline becomes a gravitational index point where all of the rest of the timelines of the multiverse spatio-temporal awareness has to follow the trend of the most spiritual timeline. So we have to become a part of that movement, I believe.
And one more thing I want to get your thoughts on before we close out. There are many that believe if you have a certain spiritual belief or faith that the afterlife is a given, that you will automatically go to what you consider heaven or a better place. But I wonder if there's a necessary knowledge of what's to come in the afterlife in order to properly navigate it. Many ancient civilizations revered the afterlife and they used practices throughout their waking lives to prepare for it for their entire life. And I'm wondering if this is something that we're missing in our modern age.
Yes, I have a video called The Metaphysics of Death. They can go on my YouTube and check that out. They talk about it in Tibetan mystery systems, the Bardo Rim. We do have examples of what occurs after death. Just because you have a belief system and you have a strong faith doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to transcend the physical reality. That's a lie. That's a part of the secret societies, feeding these religious orders to have more control over people because of the fear of going to hell. That the word hell enveloped from a word called Shelah in the Hebraic text. Shelah literally becomes the later etymon of the word shell in the physical language. So you got shell, then shell becomes hell. The shell is the physical body. The physical body is hell. So the shell in hell, they're called the husk of the Qliphoth, the backside of the Kabbalah, is the physical dimension. The physical dimension is the hell, the plasma, the higher plasma, it will be considered heaven, which is complete. It's called a rim of bliss. It's imagine bliss for a eternity is what these higher plasma fields are. So we're in shill, and later another etymon develops in the English lexicon, school. School is also derivative of shell and hail. The physical body or the physical universe is a school. So we're in the school, we're in the shell, learning in the school. In the school and the shell is a part of this thing called hell, which is just a physical paradox. Then later on, what happens is you're supposed to graduate from the shell or the physical universe. That's why we have graduation and we have the Saturn hat on at graduation.
Yeah.
You get past Saturn. There's a mystery in transcendental alchemy that comes from the Egyptian mystery school. To get past Saturn is to enter the Sirian or the Sirius star region. So Saturn is like the final boss. That's why they call it Satan, or Saturn is like the final boss in the video game. You have to battle Saturn, because Saturn is going to teach you the harshest lessons of life. Like if you don't stop eating that chicken and eating up all that bad food, this is what's going to happen. And Saturn gives you the disease. Saturn gives you the crucial, harsh lessons, spiritually and physically. That's why it's like our enemy, in a sense. But Saturn is not really an enemy. He's just a big boss who spanks that ass when you get out of.
Oh, I love it, man. We covered a lot of great information today. Ani, before I let you go, remind the audience how they can find out more about you.
Yes, you guys can follow me on YouTube at Ani Osaru. You can email me if you want a Vedic astrological reading at startribe777@gmail.com. I also do spiritual consultations. I've been doing that for 10 years. And if you want to get more in-depth advanced information, come to my Patreon. Become a part of my Patreon, patreon.com/THE_spiritual shade room. You'll know it pops up if it says the True Occult Newspaper. You can also follow me on the Spiritual Shade Room 1 on Instagram. I post stuff all the time on there.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, man. We'll definitely be doing this again. Until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We'll talk again tomorrow. We'll see y'all then.
Hello, friends. I am so excited to tell you about Independent Media Token. Independent Media Token is a brand new way to show your support for independent media without having to donate a dime. Independent Media Token is a cryptocurrency on the Solana blockchain designed to generate funds to promote and foster the growth of independent content creators, allowing them to engage in their art without having to worry about being demonetized. Through a network of media partners, of which you yourself can become a part of, Independent Media Token's goal is to ensure the powers that be can never cut off all of our areas of funding and censor the only free voices left in the world. Join the movement today. You can pick up Independent Media Token using Phantom Wallet or the Solana wallet of your choice, where you can easily swap your Solana for IMT. Grab some IMT today and remember to always know your team. To learn more, visit independentmediatoken.com or use the link right in the description. If you're looking to start your therapeutic microdosing journey, but don't know where to start, especially when looking for the highest quality ingredients, including nootropics, and what you'd expect from a true microdose capsule, check out our friends at Brainsupreme. They offer the absolute highest quality ingredients so you can start your microdosing journey knowing that you're getting top-notch ingredients. To find out more, visit their website using that link right in the description, and you can get 15% off your entire order. Are you and your family prepared for an emergency? Maybe the fake alien invasion? Now is the time to prepare yourself and your family for any event. Check out Prep Starts Now. Their mission is to provide high-quality preparedness products that empower individuals and families to be ready for any situation. They're committed to delivering reliable, trusted gear to ensure your safety, security, and peace of mind in times of need. Their product selection is carefully curated to provide you with the essential gear you need to stay prepared. From emergency kits to tactical tools, every item is chosen for its reliability and practicality. Prep Starts Now understands the importance of family, and their goal is to equip you with everything you need to build a solid plan for your family's preparedness. In today's ever-changing world, being prepared is more important than ever, and Prep Starts Now is here to help you and your family stay ready with quality products and practical guidance. Use the link in the description and get 15% off your order. Watch Doors of Perception now on Amazon Prime. We live in an incredible age of information. More and more, we're discovering that we've been lied to and misled about much of our human history. Cory Hughes is providing profound revelations about World War I, World War II, the JFK assassination, Martin Luther King's assassination, and much, much more on his new Substack, Bloody History. Subscribe now for as little as $5 monthly. Just click that link right in the description to get started now and learn about our true history. I am so excited to tell you about Independent Media Token. Independent Media Token is a brand new way to show your support for independent media without having to donate a dime. Independent Media Token is a cryptocurrency on the Solana blockchain designed to generate funds to promote and foster the growth of independent content creators, allowing them to engage in their art without having to worry about being demonetized. Through a network of media partners, of which you yourself can become a part of, Independent Media Token's goal is to ensure the powers that be can never cut off all of our areas of funding and censor the only free voices left in the world. Join the movement today. You can pick up Independent Media Token using Phantom Wallet or the Solana wallet of your choice, where you can easily swap your Solana for IMT. Grab some IMT today and remember to always know your team. To learn more, visit independentmediatoken.com or use the link right in the description.